The first trip wasn't planned. It was more of an oops moment. In a paleolithic valley, at the crack of dawn, when the mammoths were still trying to figure out if it was time to wake up or time to stay in bed, Zug, a confused caveman with questionable taste, decided to lick a frog, not out of any particular curiosity, mind you, but because he mistook it for a very odd-looking berry. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Within moments, Zug was hoisted up into a tree, waving enthusiastically at the clouds like they were long-lost relatives, declaring he needed to have a serious chat with the moon. And so the very first accidental drug trip in human history unfolded. Cavemen didn't have a word for getting high, but they sure knew when things went sideways. When the ground began breathing, and their hands started looking less like hands and more like suspiciously slithery snakes, they knew something had gone terribly wrong. Sure, fire might have been humanity's greatest discovery, but frogs? Frogs were definitely up there on the things we probably shouldn't lick list. Nature was a pharmacy, and nobody had a license. In the early days, the world wasn't sorted into neat categories like safe and deadly. There were no labels, no disclaimers, just an open buffet of leaves, bugs, barks, and mysterious substances that oozed. And humans, we were curious disasters. If someone found a mushroom, they ate it. A moldy root that smelled like abandonment and sorrow, chewed immediately. If a squirrel sniffed a flower, performed a somersault, and fell asleep in a bush, well, that flower became the new experimental snack. It was a chaotic trial and error approach that blurred the line between healing remedy and cosmic meltdown. Some plants just gave you a stomachache. Others, they made the stars hum, turned your thoughts into slow-moving birds, and made your fingers feel like confused snakes, which to an early human meant one of two things. Either the gods were trying to communicate, or it was time to lick something else and touch the fire again, just to be sure. Accidental shamans. In every tribe, there was always one person, let's call him Nib, who didn't set out to become a spiritual leader, but accidentally tripped into the role after chewing on the wrong flower. One moment he was just another guy out foraging like everyone else, and the next he was giggling at passing clouds, painting cryptic spirals on cave walls, and insisting the sun had a personal name. It was Dave, for the record. Before long, he was pointing at moss and declaring it truth, mumbling riddles to firewood and wandering around with the distant gaze of someone who had seen too many colors that didn't exist. But in those days, if you acted weird enough for long enough, especially under the influence of bark juice, you earned respect. Confusion was mistaken for wisdom. So Nib, draped in mystery and possibly leaves, became the tribe's mystic. People began asking him the important questions. Will the hunt be good? Why does my foot smell like cheese? Is that squirrel judging me? And Nib, with no formal training and zero filter, answered each one with vague poetry and interpretive grunts. Half the time he was eerily accurate. The other half he was whispering to a beetle, pleading, "Show me the path," while everyone nodded like they understood. The mushroom era. Fungi were everywhere in the ancient world, and early humans, being eternal snack enthusiasts with no concept of risk management, sampled them liberally. Some mushrooms were packed with nutrients. Others, less helpfully, caused immediate death. And then there were the special ones, the kind that made you believe your great-grandfather was playing poker with squirrels in the sky. The trouble was, they all looked suspiciously alike. So to avoid daily funeral rituals, the tribe developed a very scientific classification system. If someone ate a mushroom and danced joyfully, it was considered good. If someone ate one and died on the spot, it earned a solemn spot on the sacred Do Not Touch rock. And if someone consumed one, wept openly, and painted a buffalo flying through the clouds with emotionally complex eyes, that was deemed spirit food. These sacred fungi weren't honored because people understood them. They were honored because every time someone nibbled one, they came back, claiming to have communed with something called the feathered elk of destiny. Occasionally, these revelations came with useful insight like where to find berries or which cave not to poop in. Other times, the only takeaway was an attempt to legally marry a pine cone. And the tribe, being supportive if nothing else, just kind of rolled with it. The smoke experiment. At some point in humanity's smoky stumble through early innovation, fire met leaf, and history got interesting. One day, Grok, a curious and possibly bored caveman, decided to toss a bundle of dried herbs into the communal fire, just to see what would happen. The result was instant. The cave filled with strange, sweet-smelling smoke. The air turned thick enough to slice, and everyone went eerily silent. Then came the giggles. Someone tried to high-five a rock. Someone else forgot how to sit and just hovered awkwardly near the soup pot. Grok, meanwhile, sat cross-legged and whispered, "I am the smoke," with the serene confidence of a man who had absolutely no idea what was going on, but was fully committed. And just like that, hot boxing was born, prehistoric style. Of course, no one in the tribe understood combustion or chemical reactions, but they absolutely understood that certain leaves made the stars blink in rhythm and your thoughts feel like they had reverb. Some herbs made you sleepy, some made you ravenous, and some made you believe your toes were ancient prophets. The tribe began naming the blends accordingly. Laughgrass was for fun, Forget Root was for unspoken regrets, and Wobark, that one caused everyone to sit in a circle, marveling at their own feet for 2 straight days while completely forgetting to hunt. Which, in fairness, was kind of a spiritual experience in itself. Ritualized use, aka it's not a problem, it's a tradition. Eventually, drug use stopped being random and started becoming ceremonial. Not exactly well organized, but organized enough that it could be called tradition without anyone laughing too hard. Tribes began assigning specific plants to specific events. Coming of age? Chew the glowing root and brace for visions. Getting married? Pass around the harmony leaf and hope your new partner doesn't turn into a tree in your hallucination. Trying to contact your long-lost ancestors? Nothing beats a hearty bowl of mushroom stew, served with a side of existential dread. These ceremonies weren't casual hangouts either. They came with strict guidelines. No mushrooms before sunrise, never lick the same frog twice, and under no circumstances was Mock allowed near the fire if he'd been hitting the beet vapor again. He once tried to marry the flames. The sessions were usually led by shamans, the tribe's trippiest individuals, known for their vivid hallucinations, cryptic wisdom, and absolutely terrible haircuts. With wild hand gestures and unsettlingly intense eye contact, they'd guide the group through chants, howls, collective sobbing, and enthusiastic tree-hugging. From the outside, it looked like a breakdown. From the inside, it felt like cosmic enlightenment, especially when someone loudly announced the fire had just invented dancing and demanded everyone join, which they did. Badly. Not all highs were good, let's be honest. Early humans didn't have the science to predict how a plant might affect your brain, so not every trip was a magical journey through starlight and ancestral wisdom. Some were complete and utter disasters. One time, the tribe brewed tea from a purple flower that looked pretty enough to sip. The result? Every single person who drank it instantly forgot what legs were for. 3 people scaled a tree and declared themselves the wind. Another spent 6 solid hours staring at his own hand like it held the secrets of the universe. And one particularly ambitious soul tried to wrestle the sun, shouting, "Come down and fight me, you glowing coward." That flower was never used again. They named it Oops Blossom and added it to the absolutely not pile with a drawing of a sad face. Then came the truly dark trips, bad visions, screaming fits. One person insisted the moon had teeth and was actively chewing the stars. That night ended in a mass cuddle and an emergency root juice cleanse. But from these disasters, early humans learned something important. Dosage mattered. So does supervision. That's when Nib, the unintentional shaman with the moss hat and wise stick, was officially put in charge of all spirit snacks. From then on, no one tripped without Nib nearby, quietly humming and watching for signs of impending tree-climbing declarations. The role of the squirrel. Every time the tribe dabbled in spirit snacks, one unlikely figure always showed up. His name was Jeffrey. He was a squirrel. No one knew where he came from, and no one ever saw where he went. But the moment herbs started burning or someone began humming to a rock, Jeffrey arrived, like clockwork. Sometimes he perched on a branch and stared with eyes full of ancient judgment. Other times he casually stole food from the offering pile while maintaining direct eye contact. Once, he wore a crooked crown made of beet stems and sat atop a log like he ruled the valley. And honestly, no one questioned it. High humans didn't see Jeffrey as a pest. They saw him as a sign, a tiny, twitchy, furred oracle. Some claimed he whispered riddles into the wind. Others swore he only communicated through fart noises and dramatic tail flicks. Regardless, every sacred ritual included a gift for Jeffrey: berries, nuts, even a lovingly painted pebble or two. He never said thank you. Of course not. He was a squirrel. But somehow, just knowing Jeffrey was there made everyone feel a little safer, a little more guided, a little less alone in the glowing, giggling madness of early human enlightenment. Cultural shifts and relaxed tribes. As word quietly spread across the Paleolithic wilds about the valley with the good mushrooms, other tribes began to drift in, curious, cautious, and very interested in what exactly made everyone around here so mellow. And just like that, things began to shift. Ancient rivalries that had once led to spear-throwing contests now dissolved into peaceful dance-offs. Warriors from opposing bands sat cross-legged in smoky circles, exchanging compliments about each other's eyebrow ridges and debating the emotional depth of mammoth grunts. At one summit, what was supposed to be a tense negotiation ended with a communal smoke circle and the birth of interpretive mammoth mimicry. Trade evolved too, not just in tools or pelts, but in the sacred psychoactive herbs themselves. Dream seeds arrived from the misty southern forests. Chuckle root made its way down from cold echoing mountain caves, and a surprisingly popular bark snuff known only as snorg became infamous for causing sneezing fits followed by spontaneous poetry slams. The result? Tribes weren't just surviving anymore, they were vibing. Art flourished, songs got weirder, cave murals became less hunt this beast and more what if the moon had feelings. And from that moment on, human history took a slightly sillier, more introspective turn. The great overdose of year unknown. One fateful season, the tribe got cocky. Flush with confidence and spiritual swagger, they decided to mix their three most powerful substances: snorg, hua bark, and the ever-controversial frog slime. The resulting concoction was named, somewhat optimistically, God Soup. It was not divine, it was catastrophic. Every single person who sipped it passed out within minutes, entering a 2-day blackout that was described later by those who could remember as a warm void full of elbows. When the tribe finally awoke, the fire was cold, the meat stash was mysteriously empty, and Jeffrey, the ever-present squirrel, had staged a full-blown coup. He'd barricaded the cave entrance with sticks, painted war markings on his tiny squirrel face, and was demanding taxes in the form of nuts and shiny rocks. Chaos reigned. That night went down in tribal history as the squirrel coup, a cautionary tale still whispered around the fire with wide eyes and clenched cloaks. In the aftermath, the tribe reached a shaky consensus: no more mixing. Except on solstices or birthdays, or if someone was going through something emotional. Okay, there were loopholes, but the message was clear. Treat the substances with respect, or risk ending up dethroned by a rodent with ambition. What it all meant. So, did cavemen use drugs? Without question. Not with syringes or bongs, of course, but with whatever nature threw at them: leaves, roots, spores, and the occasional unfortunate encounter with frog goo. They didn't have the modern term getting high, but they absolutely had their own poetic ways of describing the experience. They called it speaking to the sky, becoming the mud, or listening to the color green, which sounds ridiculous now, but back then felt completely valid after chewing the right moss. These early psychonauts didn't use substances to party. They used them to heal wounds, celebrate milestones, escape hard winters, or chase the meaning of life across the stars. Sometimes it was about glimpsing the universe. Other times it was just about forgetting, especially the fact that mammoths, no matter how cuddly they looked, really didn't want hugs. This wasn't about fun, it was spiritual, communal, and deeply tied to survival. Using mind-bending plants and hallucinogenic roots was just one more way early humans explored not just their world, but their inner landscape. Armed with nothing but blind curiosity, semi-edible snacks, and the dangerous but heartfelt conviction that licking mysterious objects might somehow unlock the secrets of existence. So the next time someone casually jokes about prehistoric stoners, take a moment to appreciate the truth behind the humor. Early humans weren't clueless. They were bold, curious, and wildly experimental geniuses, operating with zero instructions, zero safety labels, and far too much access to suspicious-looking mushrooms. They didn't have science textbooks, but they had gut instinct. They didn't have therapists, but they had Nib, whose bark-fueled ramblings somehow made people feel better. They didn't have Netflix, but they sat in front of a fire for hours, watching sparks and smoke turn into gods, visions, and occasionally dancing mammoths. And somewhere out there, under the vast, star-speckled sky, a lone caveman once leaned toward a glowing beetle and whispered with solemn wonder, "I understand now." Was it real? Was it the bark juice? Who cares? In that fleeting, bizarre moment he felt connected to the earth beneath him, the tribe beside him, and something grander than just another day of foraging and farting in the wind. Then, as fate would have it, he tripped into a bush, and Jeffrey the squirrel stole his lunch with zero remorse. Honestly, perfect.